In the summer of 1876, the deadliest thing in Dodge City wasn't a gunfight, it was a glass of water. Imagine waking before sunrise, July 12th, 1876, in a wood-frame house on the north side of the railroad tracks. The bed is a straw mattress on a rope frame, and the sheet beneath you is already damp with the night's sweat. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the air coming through the unglazed window is already warm. Not morning warm, not the gentle cool of an early summer dawn. Warm the way a breath is warm, the warmth of something living, something you can't get away from. You know what today is going to be before you open your eyes. 104 degrees by afternoon, if yesterday was any guide. The Kansas plains don't cool down in July. They just pretend to, for a few hours, while the dark lasts. The smell reaches you before full consciousness. Cattle, dust, smoke from somewhere on Front Street, and beneath it, faintly, insistently, something sweet and organic you have learned not to think about. You lie still for a moment, then you get up. In Dodge City in the summer of 1876, everything that could kill you was invisible, and the heat made all of it worse. Is not the Dodge City of legend? The gunfights were real. There were shootings on Front Street, and Wyatt Earp was indeed here, serving as assistant city marshal for part of this year. But the gun was not the primary threat to a family trying to survive the summer of 1876. The threats were quieter. They lived in the water barrel outside your door. They bred in the cuts of beef hanging in the back room. They multiplied in the July heat at a rate no one in Dodge City yet had the science to understand. We're going to spend one day in this town, one ordinary summer day in 1876, in a place that had no refrigeration, no clean water supply, and no working knowledge of what was making people sick and filling the graves on Boot Hill. Here is what the textbooks leave out. The frontier was not primarily dangerous because of outlaws. It was dangerous because summer came every year. And summer, in the age before cold storage and clean water, was a season you had to survive. The first task of the morning, before coffee, before prayer, before anything, is the water barrel. It sits just outside the back door, a 40-gallon wooden barrel with a wooden lid, filled yesterday from the Arkansas River by a water hauler who charged 15 cents a barrel for the service. You lift the lid. The water is not cold. It hasn't been cold since May. By July, it's the temperature of a tepid bath, perhaps 70 degrees in the morning, climbing to 80 or 90 by afternoon. It tastes faintly of sulfur because the Arkansas runs over gypsum beds upstream, and faintly of mud because the Arkansas also runs through the holding grounds where 300,000 cattle have crossed this summer, drinking and waiting and doing what cattle do. You drink it anyway. You need to. Some families boil their water. This practice exists in 1876, though its reasoning, germ theory, the idea that invisible microorganisms cause disease, is not yet the received medical wisdom of the Kansas frontier. Pasteur's work is known in European universities. It has not reached the water barrel outside your door. The families that boil their water do so from instinct, from tradition, from a vague sense that heat makes things safer. They are right. They do not entirely know why. You wash in a basin. The water is already warm. The soap is lye, harsh, alkaline, the kind that strips the oils from your hands and leaves them cracked and raw by August. There is no moisturizer. There is lard, which some women use at night. There is the knowledge that cracked skin gets infected, and infected skin on the frontier, in 1876, is a problem that does not always resolve itself. You clean your teeth with a frayed twig, or a cloth folded over your finger and dipped in salt. The traveling dentist who passed through every few months charged 50 cents for an extraction, a price that meant most people delayed treatment until the pain was genuinely unbearable. The dentist didn't have anesthetic. He had whiskey and his own speed with the forceps. Now you dress. If you are a woman, this means layers regardless of season. A chemise, stays, a petticoat, a full-length dress in wool or heavy cotton. The sweat doesn't dry in this heat, it accumulates. By midday, the dress you put on in the comparative coolness of dawn will be soaked through at the back, at the armpits, at the collar. There is no relief from this. You endure it the way you endure the smell, the flies, the heat rising from the baked dirt of the street as the price of being alive in this particular place, in this particular year. By the time you are dressed, the sun has crested the horizon and the temperature has already climbed 5 degrees. The day is beginning. The first decisions are ahead of you. And in the summer of 1876, some of those decisions are going to be a matter of life and death, though you may not know until it's too late which ones. Breakfast in the summer of 1876 is not a simple pleasure. It is a calculation. The safest foods in your kitchen are the oldest ones. The salt pork in the barrel, packed in coarse salt months ago, before the heat arrived, is safe. Dried beans, soaked overnight, are safe enough if you cook them long. Cornmeal mush, sweetened with molasses if you have it, is safe. These are the foods of survival. Bland, heavy, and, critically, they need no cold storage, because cold storage does not exist in this house. In the back room, hanging from a hook near the ceiling, is a cut of beef from a steer slaughtered yesterday afternoon. 5 cents a pound. It smelled fine last evening. This morning you take it down, hold it close, and smell it. Not rotten, not obviously wrong, but different. The kind of different that makes the back of your throat tighten slightly. You stand there a moment, holding the meat, deciding. Here is the counterintuitive truth of the frontier summer. The fresh food was the dangerous food. The cattle passing through Dodge City were trail-worn animals that had walked from Texas. Their milk came from stressed cows drinking from the same contaminated rivers you drank from. Butter churned from that milk could turn in 4 hours at today's temperature. The beef, slaughtered in the heat and hung without refrigeration, entered a biological race between you and whatever was already growing in it. Salt pork that had been curing since March, ugly, dense, fibrous, exhausting to eat, was what kept your family alive. The fresh, cheap beef from the trail was a gamble, and people lost that gamble regularly. The cemetery on Boot Hill, just north of town, accepts bodies throughout the year, but the summer months fill it fastest. What the Dodge City Times called summer complaint is what we would recognize as acute gastroenteritis, dysentery, typhoid, the cascade of symptoms caused by bacteria that bloom in warm, contaminated water and spoiled meat. Cramping, then fever, then a kind of hollow, wrung-out exhaustion that can kill a weakened person in 48 hours. Children are the most vulnerable. Young men just arrived on the trail, immune systems stressed by weeks of poor food and bad water, are second. By sunset, a healthy person could already be dying, and they would not yet know it. The flies don't help. Dodge City in July has a fly population that defies easy description. 300,000 cattle have moved through the surrounding range this season. Flies breed in the warmth and the waste, moving between the cattle pens and your kitchen without pausing. Any uncovered food is accessible within minutes. You have a piece of gauze to cover the dishes. You use it. You know it doesn't stop all of them. You use it anyway. You make the decision about the beef. You cut away the gray, slightly tacky exterior and cook the interior hard over a fire that drives the kitchen past 100 degrees until the center is no longer pink. This is, without you knowing why, the right decision. Whether you will be sick tonight depends on how thoroughly you cooked it, how contaminated the cut was, and how strong your gut is after years of eating exactly this way in exactly this heat. You eat. You won't know if you guessed right until evening. Robert Wright, the merchant whose store sits at the center of Front Street, sells salt in bulk all year. But demand spikes every June, reliably, as every family in Dodge City begins the summer calculation. Wright has watched it long enough to know the families that buy early, buy enough, and salt everything are the families that make it to September. Step outside at 9 in the morning, and Dodge City is already in full voice. The sound reaches you before the sight, the deep, massed lowing of cattle in the holding pens south of the tracks. So constant, so large, that it becomes after a few weeks a kind of silence, the baseline against which everything else is heard. Over it, the shriek and hiss of an AT and SF locomotive working east, hammering from construction on 2nd Avenue. The indistinct noise of Front Street, voices, a piano from somewhere, the creak of wagon wheels on the dust. The smell outdoors is several layers deeper than what you woke to. The cattle pens are not far from anything here. This is a small town, a quarter mile from one edge to the other, and the wind carries the concentrated smell of several thousand animals in July heat toward whatever part of town it chooses. The hide and tallow operations south of the tracks add their own contribution. The thick, sweet, rancid smell of hides being processed, tallow being rendered. The longhorn cattle are not just passing through, they are being converted here, into beef shipped east, into hides, into the capital that is building these new storefronts on Front Street. The dust is its own element. Unpaved streets, baked to pale clay by weeks of sun, rise with every footstep and wagon wheel into a fine suspended particulate that coats everything. Clothing, face, the inside of your mouth by midday. You cough. Everyone coughs, in summer, in Dodge City. Not always from illness, from dust, though sometimes from illness. It is not always easy to distinguish. Outside the Long Branch Saloon, a delivery man is unloading blocks of ice wrapped in burlap. The blocks are smaller than when they left the ice house. Some have lost a third of their volume to the journey. Several men stand watching. None of them can afford a block for domestic use. The men watching don't move. They just watch until the door closes. The ice goes behind the bar where it will chill the whiskey and beer of men who can pay for both. This is the only refrigeration operating in the public life of Dodge City. The saloons have ice. You do not. The Arkansas River is visible from the south end of town, a brown, slow-moving ribbon of water that in July runs lower than in spring. Along its banks, cattle have waded and drunk and left their mark. The water hauler who fills your barrel draws from a point above the main cattle crossing. This costs more than drawing it yourself. You pay it, and you consider it money well spent, and you are not entirely wrong. By noon, the temperature on Front Street is 102 degrees Fahrenheit. The light is flat and white and crushing. The shadows between buildings offer no real relief, only the absence of direct sun. Dogs have disappeared beneath whatever overhang they can find. A group of drovers, newly arrived from Texas and waiting for their employer to settle accounts, sit beneath the Long Branch awning, hats over their faces. They have been traveling for 2 months through this same heat. They are used to it in the way that people become used to things that have not yet killed them. You conduct your errands. Cornmeal at Wright's store, new shipment, arrived yesterday. A length of salt pork from the barrel. You ask if it's been kept properly. It has. You do not buy the fresh beef from the drover offering it at 3 cents a pound outside. You remember this morning's calculation. You walk home through the dust, in the noise, in the smell, with your purchases. You have made your decisions for the day. For now, they are the right ones. Between 1 and 4 in the afternoon, Dodge City falls into a kind of armed truce with the heat. The hammering from the construction site becomes intermittent. The drovers beneath the Long Branch awning have stopped talking. The street-level dust hangs without rising. Even the cattle seem quieter, as if they too are waiting for something to give. In kitchens across the north side of town, the afternoon is when the food decisions of the morning announce their consequences. A woman sets down her mending, sits still, waits to see if what she's feeling is the heat or something else. Summer complaint typically presents its first symptoms 4 to 8 hours after contamination. The cramping begins quietly, then more insistently. Then the fever rises, and the body begins the desperate process of expelling whatever it has recognized as wrong, long after the recognition comes too late. 4 to 8 hours. which means whatever you ate this morning. The treatment available in Dodge City is laudanum, opium dissolved in alcohol, sold legally, the universal palliative of the era. It does not cure. It dims the pain, slows the symptoms, and buys time. For a strong adult with a mild case, rest and time are often sufficient. For a child, for someone already weakened by weeks of inadequate food and bad water and relentless heat, the arithmetic is less forgiving. Dr. Thomas McCarty, who served the Dodge City area in the mid-1870s, was one man in a town of over 1,000 permanent residents, surrounded by the seasonal population of drovers. His medicine was the medicine of his era, useful for setting bones, competent at pulling teeth and lancing abscesses, largely helpless before the bacteria that were the true killers of the Kansas frontier summer. He knew this. He had watched enough people die of summer complaint to know that his intervention changed little. He prescribed rest, laudanum, boiled water when he could persuade people to use it, and noted the deaths in the record with the careful handwriting of someone who had stopped being surprised. He noted the deaths. He did not stop being careful with his handwriting. There was nothing else to do. Boot Hill is not, in the popular imagination of later decades, a cemetery full of gunfighters. In the records of 1876, the names and stated causes tell a different story. Young men from Texas who drank from the wrong part of the river. A woman of 32, cause listed as fever. Children, in summer, in clusters that suggest a contaminated water source or a shared food supply. The gun was a more dramatic killer, and it found its way into the mythology. Summer complaint filled more graves. It found its way into almost none of the stories. By evening, the temperature has dropped to somewhere in the low 80s, the Kansas July night, offering not comfort but endurance. A slight wind moves the air without cooling it. The kerosene lamp is lit. The saloons on Front Street are accelerating into their nightly peak. The cattle pens are quieter, finally. You bank the fire. You check the food one last time. You cover everything you can. You move the remaining beef to the coolest corner of the back room and consider it. Tomorrow morning you will make the same calculation. Tonight you are not sick. The decision held. You lie down. The straw mattress is warm from the room's heat. The temperature indoors will not drop below 80 degrees tonight. You will sleep in intervals. The heat doesn't allow more. Waking to the sound of a train, the distant cattle, the wind, and then sleeping again. Outside, Boot Hill sits silent on the north end of town. Its newest residents arrived this week. More will arrive before September. Before sleep, one last thing. She moves through the dark kitchen by the feeling of it. The edge of the table, the cool of the basin, the familiar weight of the cloth that covers the food. She lifts each cloth, checks by touch and smell the things that remain from the day, and replaces each covering carefully. She doesn't know about bacteria. She doesn't know that the invisible world is more crowded than the visible one, and that July in Kansas is its season. She knows what her mother taught her, and what the summer has confirmed, year after year. Keep it covered, keep it as cool as you can, use the oldest food first, and pray the night air helps. She does this every evening of every summer she has lived here. She will do it until September, when the heat finally relents. She blows out the lamp. The darkness comes all at once. Outside, somewhere to the south, a single steer is still moving in the holding pen, its footsteps raising dust that no one can see. These people endured every summer this way, not with our knowledge, not with our tools, not with even the language to name what was trying to kill them. They endured it with salt, with fire, with cloth, and with the stubborn, accumulated wisdom of people who had learned, without understanding why, that certain things kept you alive. They were right. They just never got to know it. And every summer, they woke up and did it again.